Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the subspecialty day. And the first speaker for this session, which is on pediatric ophthalmology, will be Dr. Tejaswini, and she will be speaking on newborn infants 0 to 28 days. Dr. Tejaswini, you have 4 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. I'll share my screen, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you see my screen?
No, ma'am, no.
Not yet. I've shared it.
No, ma'am, you don't share. First, you need to open your presentation, then click to share screen on Zoom.
Is it visible now, sir?
No, ma'am.
So I had tested it earlier, actually.
No, ma'am. Ma'am, प्रेजेंटेशन ओपन करने के बाद जूम पे नीचे एक शेयर स्क्रीन का बटन है ग्रीन कलर का.
हाँ सर, वही क्या था?
नहीं हो रहा.
There's some error there. Is it visible now, sir?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Dr. Tejaswini, there is a share screen right at the bottom.
Yes, sir. I had checked it when I joined today at 11:30 a.m. and it was visible that time. So I'll just recheck it again.
Yeah.
ऐसे होगा मैम शेयर.
हाँ sir. Thank you. So I have another laptop open. Should I join from that with you?
Yeah, we'll. In the meantime, we'll go to the second speaker. And Dr. Shailja, are you ready? Dr. Shailja?
Not join.
Not join. And Dr. Pallavi is there?
Yes.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
And Dr. Pallavi, you can start about examination of a toddler, which is 1 to 3 years, and then we'll go back to Dr. Tejaswini.
Okay, sir. Can you see my screen, sir?
Yeah, we can see. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm presenting on how to examine a toddler. So when the child is at your
full screen.
Make it full screen, please.
Yes. When the child is first at your clinic, first try to just examine the child as the child is. So when you're taking an history from the parents, try to just look at the child to know whether the child has ocular alignments, the facial disfigurement is there or no. If there is any abnormal head posture, any epicanthal fold, any lid abnormalities, so that you can know what you really have to go in and see when you start examining, because it's very difficult to examine a child if then you start deciding what you have to do. Look out if there's any tearing, any clouding of the cornea, any nystagmus if present. Pupillary responses is seen at a later stage. So the first thing after the history has been taken, try to just take your ophthalmoscope and just try to go and see the red reflex, so that you know whether there is any ocular media abnormalities are there and whether the reflexes are fine in both the eyes, so that you know what you should expect when you see the vision, whether there will be similar vision in both eyes or there will be any discrepancy in the vision, and how you have to go ahead with which eye to examine first. If you examine the bad eye first, maybe the child will become cranky and not cooperate. So first, always try to see which eye has to be examined by the Brooks reflex, and you will get an idea whether you are dealing with any anisometropia also. So for assessment of vision in the children from approximate 1 to 2 years, there are many tests available. The OKN drum is there, Bock Candy head beats are there, Worthy ivory ball tests are there, but these tests are really not that informative, because they might sometimes give a overestimation of the vision. So preferential looking tests are the best tests that can be done. In this, tele acuity cards can be used, the League rating cards or the Cardiff cards can be used, VEP also can be used. A 15 prism test is always best to know whether the fixation in both eyes is equal or no, and whether the eyes have equal vision or no. By assessment of 1.5 to 3 years, you will be able to know by the resolution acuity. Lee symbols now can be used because now they have recognition acuity. Cake pictures are there, HOTV charts or tumbling E charts. Snellen's chart can also be used for children. So basically, a monocular and a binocular test are very important. Cover and cover test has to be done in all the children, those who visit, so that you know whether there is any fixation discrepancy, if there is any myopia in any eye. Pupillary responses have to be examined while you're examining the eyes. Extraocular movements and pursuits do get examined, so they can be looked. Sockets are very difficult to be examined in a child. You need a cooperative and a child who is at a little higher age. Anterior segment examinations are important in each and every child. Please do not miss them. They have to be done either with your handheld slit lamp, or you can have a flying baby position or a Superman position, as we say. Or if the child is cooperative, they can sit at your normal slit lamp and you can examine the child. Fundus examination has to be done for everyone. Look out for the central fixation and the maturation of the macula. Retinoscopy, whether the child is having amblyopia or not having amblyopia, is not a discrepancy. It has to be done for all children to rule out if there is any hypermetropic, higher hypermetropias are there in the child. So all examinations are very important in the children. Please do not miss any of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pallavi. You've completed your speech well in time, well before time. Thank you so much. Chairpersons, may I request you to please invite the next speaker. Thank you.
So, Dr. Tejaswini, are you ready? Is Dr. Tejaswini was there? She's not joined again. Dr. Shailaja?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was some glitch in joining.
So your topic is examination of an infant.
Infant.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I'll just share my screen. So thank you, AIS, for giving me this opportunity. Am I clear?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so a part of it has been covered by the previous speaker. I would just say that in infants, it is important to know the visual milestones. So around 0 to 2 months, you would have the pupillary response and a sporadic fix and follow. The fix and follow or the central steady maintained fixation that we see in children comes only after 2 months of age. So before that, it has to be just the pupillary response and a dazzle reflex or a blink response, which has to be seen. After that, it will be the central steady maintained. Even smooth pursuit, they develop around 4 to 6 months of age. But the saccades, they develop around 1 to 3 months of age. At this stage, there should not be any esotropia in a child. Beyond 6 months to 2 years, they reach out for toys and food, and that can be used in testing vision for them. They will have accurate, symmetric, smooth pursuit. So after 6 months of age, if the smooth pursuit is absent or not or asymmetric, then it has to raise a suspicion. And later on, slowly the vision matures, which is not the interest of my talk. So preliminary evaluation, as my previous speaker has also told, that there should be careful observation of the child. The red reflex is very important in children. It can be taken by a direct ophthalmoscope or by a camera where the flash mode should be on. Or there are some devices which use this red reflex to screen for refractive errors, which are the photosteiners. So either of them can be used to judge the red reflex, and we can have an abnormal red reflex in the form of a dull reflex or a white reflex or an asymmetric or non-uniform red reflex, which can tell you about any pathology inside the eye. But if you want to assess the vision, then it can be either direct or indirect assessment. The indirect assessment is blink or menace, as I've mentioned, but resistance to occlusion and the fixation preference and the fixation is very important in infants to assess that. This is very useful clinical tool which can be used by anybody, including any ophthalmologists and even pediatricians. The quantitative assessment of visual acuity, however, has to be done using OKN, VP, or the forced choice preferential looking tests. The toys or the targets that you use to check for a fixation preference has to be devoid of sound. They have to be only light, and they should be attractive enough to attract the attention of the child. This is showing the fixation. You have to do first binocularly and then check monocularly by covering one eye and maintaining whether the child is maintaining, fixing or following or not. This is a small video showing resistance to occlusion. As you can see, the child is binocularly fixing to the target. When you close the left eye, The child maintains fixation and is attracted towards the target and sees with the right eye. However, when the cover is shifted to the right eye, he tries to move the cover. So that shows that the left eye vision is not as good as the right eye, and he is having some amblyopia or some vision problem in that eye. So this resistance to occlusion is a very useful test. The other thing is central steady maintain. You need to ask them to follow the targets. Again, binocularly first and then monocularly. Often it is good to ask the mother to close the eye so that they can see. And you see the follow. If they do not follow, it could be very small children, as you see in this video, they may not follow. But if you close the light, sometimes they follow in darkness. And this video shows an example of an unsteady fixation because of bilateral cataract, because of nystagmus. Now, fixation preference is you compare the vision of one eye to the other. When you close one eye and you remove the cover, if one eye deviates and the other eye does not take a fixation, that means that eye which does not take a fixation remains in a deviation. That eye has some vision problem. That is why the child is fixing with the other eye or having a preference with the other eye. Oken is optokinetic nystagmus. It is elicited by a drum having vertical stripes. And you can see a nystagmus that is elicited by this drum. This estimate of visual acuity is made by the thinnest stripe that elicits this response. This can be used to objectively assess the vision, and VP also in children can be used, in especially the flash sweep VP. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Pallavi. Now I would like to request our chairperson to please invite the next
Dr. Tejaswini, are you ready now? Dr. Tejaswini, she's there.
Please unmute. Please unmute.
Yes, sir, I'm ready, sir.
You can share your screen now, please. Your topic is again a ocular examination in a newborn infant.
Is it visible now, sir?
Yes.
Wait, ma'am, it is opening.
Is it visible, sir? Should I start?
No.
Your presentation is not visible.
I've shared it in a different laptop.
Bandwidth is little low, madam. So just wait for a few seconds.
Okay.
In the meantime, maybe
What you can do, you can just try switching off your video and see.
Okay, sir.
Share again. Share
now,
again.
I've shared it, sir. Is it visible?
No, sir. I think the network ka issue hai, ma'am.
but you can continue with your talk. At least we can hear you.
Okay, sir. Good afternoon, everybody, seniors and colleagues. Apologies for the delay. I'll be speaking about measurement of vision and examination of eyes in a newborn that is up to 28 days of age. So early screening is mainly to reduce long-term visual impairment and identify risk factors. Even if examination is normal, follow-up of these neonates is essential, especially those having high-risk factors. So I've started my video because so is it visible now? Hello?
No, it's not visible.
Okay. The screening guidelines have been given by Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Universal eye screening is recommended at all delivery centers and neonatal care units immediately post-birth. This can be done by a pediatrician or a neonatologist or an ophthalmologist. Now, the neonates at high risk are premature infants, those with NICU admission, low birth weight, low gestational age, infants with neurodevelopmental delay, birth asphyxia, intrauterine infections, torch infections, family history of congenital glaucoma, congenital cataract, retinoblastoma, strabismus, amblyopia, either parent or sibling having any eye disorder at birth. If mother has had fever and rash during pregnancy, if there is albinism, any brain lesion found on newborn imaging, chromosomal abnormalities suspected, and if birth defects involving facial structures are present, Even if examination is normal during neonates with having all these high risk factors should be followed up and should be mentioned in the discharge card. Vision is very poor during the first 28 days, around 20 to 200 to 20 to 800. Fixation is poor. Anterior segment is up to 80% of adults, while the posterior segment is less than half of adults. Basal tear secretion is low and increases with maturity of the newborn. Minimal corneal haze is normally present. Corneal haze is more common in premature infants. They can also have shallow anterior chamber, myotic pupils, blue iris, and no light reflex can be elicited before 30 weeks of gestational age. Now, the refractive state is commonly hyperopic. Prematurity is associated with myopia. Ocular alignment is variable. 2/3 are exotropic, while 1/3 can be orthotropic. Eye movements are sporadic, inaccurate, jerky, made up of saccades without smooth pursuits. Birth, the vision is poor and fixation is poor. That is why the vision assessment is to be done indirectly, mainly by using Bruckner test or red reflex test. Eye closure and illumination with bright light can also be elicited after 25 weeks of gestational age. Optokinetic nystagmus and electrophysiological tests have been done for documentation of vision in this age group, but they are not practically possible in the first month of life. So Bruckner test, a coaxial source of light, a direct ophthalmoscope, is flashed on both the eyes simultaneously at a 1 meter distance. Corneal right reflex and fundal reflex both have to be compared. In case of cataract and vitreous hemorrhage, the right reflex is blocked. Even in retinoblastoma, a yellow or white reflex can be seen. Anisometria commonly has unequal reflexes, while strabismus, the deviated eye, has a brighter red reflex. Examination, most important is corneal diameter. If it is less than 9 mm or more than 11.5 mm, it is abnormal. And if pupil is less than 1.8 mm or more than 5.4 mm, that is abnormal. Look for a white reflex. Any redness, discharge, port wine stain has to be noted. There is a separate formula for corneal diameter in premature infants, that is 0.0015 into weight in grams plus 6.3. The final result is in millimeters, and this is used to compare the corneal diameter in premature infants. 0.5% erythromycin ointment has been advised by Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram in India, but many countries have stopped usage of ocular prophylaxis now. If ROP screening is to be done if gestational age is less than 34 weeks, in low birth weight less than 2 kgs, or with high risk factors before discharge. Birth trauma can be seen with forceps and vacuum, can be seen in the form of hyphema, corneal injuries, Descemet tears, typically vertical, corneal edema. NEST study has been done which shows that subconjunctival hemorrhages can be present in higher birth weight babies due to chest compression while passage through the vaginal route, and this causes higher venous congestion in the head and neck region. Retinal hemorrhages can also be present because of pressure on the eye usage due to vacuum and forceps. In case of congenital dacryocele, especially in bilateral cases, respiratory distress can be present and urgent prompt surgery is required. Marsupialization of the intranasal cyst, which is present above the valve of Hasner, has to be done. In unilateral cases, in-office probing can be planned, and if unsuccessful, surgery can be done later. CNLDO can present depending on the maturity of the lacrimal passage, can present at 2 to 4 weeks of age in some babies. Thank you.
Just one line I think we can add here, because we are covering this age group regarding ROP screening. At what stage it has to be done? So
yes, sir. It has to be done less than 34 weeks of age or more than 34 weeks of gestational age if associated with high risk factors like NICU admission, if hospital has been, oxygen has been given, if sepsis is there, blood transfusion is done, or if the birth weight is less than 2 kgs. In Indian scenarios, we should do ROP screening either before discharge or at least or by 30 days of age, whichever is earlier. That is when before discharge the neonate has to be screened.
Thank you. And I think we can go with the next topic, which is Dr. Amit. Is Dr. Amit there?
Preschool child.
No,
Dr.
sir. No.
Not there.
Dr. Nishita.
Dr.
Yes,
Nishita.
so I'm there. Yes, I'm there.
You can start your presentation, which
Yes,
is
sir.
primary school going children.
Yes. Sir. So can you see my videos? I mean, presentation?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Just a second. Go full screen. So thanks everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. Myself, Dr. Nishita. I will be presenting on how to measure vision and eye examination in the age group 6 to 12 years. So why at all an eye examination is needed in kids? This is because the child does not realize if the visual problem is unilateral, and parents do not realize it either unless the child complains most of the times. And still, it is a very sensitive age for development of amblyopia if abnormal visual experience stays uncorrected. Also, this is the age where the child recognizes self and can easily get stigmatized in school due to squint, nystagmus, abnormal head postures, etc. At 6 years of age, what happens is the working distance of the demand of the child changes from 3 meters to approximately 6 meters. While learning, visual skills like eye focusing, tracking, trimming, eye-hand coordinations are more in demand. In sports also, clear distance vision, good depth perception, wide field of vision, and good eye-hand coordination is necessary. And again, it is the age where still we can intervene, give corrections, and hold on the child from becoming amblyopic. Thinking of this, NPCB came with school eye screening program, which started for kids between 9 to 14 years of age. It involved trained primary school teachers as the examiners, and hence the false positivity rate is high. The use 6/12 tumbling e-optotype is taken as cutoff, and kids who were having vision less than 6/12 were followed up with experts. But the follow-up is still poor, and the compliance if the spectacles are given to the spectacles is also not 100%. This was all going on good in COVID era, but the school world came to complete standstill in March 2020, and the pandemic COVID started. But for kids, along with pandemic COVID, myopia is a bigger pandemic. So we need to spread a word and be proactive regarding screening of such kids. Also, there are no outdoor activities. Excessive use of digital devices is going on, and this has made the parents aware of the same, and they are voluntarily coming to get their kids screened for visual problems. For all this, the complaints of the kids are generally frequent rubbing or blinking, redness, frequent styes. They cover one eye or have specific head tilts or tongue, or squint, headache, eye strain, and also losing place while reading, underperformance in sports activities even when they're physically normal. Surprisingly, undetected and untreated vision problems may elicit symptoms very much similar to ADHD like also, kids with proven ADHD spectrum also have significant visual problems. We need to assess them. So how this vision can be assessed in these school-going kids? It can be simply done with Snellen chart because all of them are aware with the alphabets. Little modifications can be done for amlyopes like placing bars around the symbols. Or ETDRS is a better thing because we can diagnose as well as monitor such kids. It is generally checked monocularly as well as binocularly, unaided as well as aided for distance and near. And for those having nystagmus, one eye needs to be cocked. If not done previously, color vision must be tested as it may interfere school performance and job profile later. Diffraction is generally done with cycloplegic drugs. PMT is needed when there is a difference between readings between before and after cycloplegia. But autorefraction is a big no for testing such. Examination starts generally when the child walks in the OPD. It starts with the head posture, and head posture is abnormal. That means the child is trying to have binocular vision. If there is a tilt, you should do a 3-step test. If you want to distinguish between ophthalmic or orthopedic torticollis, you can have patch test to be done. Adnexal examination can reveal some lid deformities like ptosis or coloboma or capillary hemangiomas, and they may lead to systemic diagnosis like Horner syndrome because of neuroblastoma and colomomas associated systemic disorders. Changes in pulmonary fissure can be seen in case of complex squints like DRS. On adduction, there is a retraction. Pseudosquints are common in case of lid formations like epicanthus. Ocular alignments are generally checked with cover test, uncover, and measured with Piesenbach cover test. If child is uncooperative, we can go ahead with Krimsky or modified Krimsky test. Ocular motility is generally checked in all 9 gazes. Both ductions and versions should be checked. In case of binocular function, we need to check NPC, NPA, and accommodation facility and amplitude. Accommodation function, especially accommodative facility, is of prime importance whenever child's reading ability is concerned. It has been shown that accommodative facility and stereo acuity are best predictors of reading performance of a child, especially in the age group 5 to 7 years. Fusion for near and distance should be checked with Warford dot test. Stereo acuity should be checked with Rand dot test. Slit lamp examination for anterior posterior segment should be done thoroughly. tilted disc, colobomas, temporal tract, macular star, cherry red spot can lead you to a specific diagnosis. A passing reference should be given to child abuse and pediatric ocular trauma. I direct in child abuse. Retinal hemorrhages with retinal folds and macular retinoschisis in the absence of skull fractures or automobile accident history is typically seen in abusive head trauma like shaken baby syndrome. Trauma during sports and recreation activities is also common, and any trauma to the eye should be thoroughly evaluated. If need be, the child should be taken under GA and examined. So this is a summary how a comprehensive eye examination should be done, and the child should be followed up later on. To summarize, afterwards, we also need to have regular and frequent follow-up of such kids. Vision must be checked at all follow-ups. Amblyopic kids, after giving classes for the first time, should be followed up after 6 weeks. And after routinely starting amblyopia therapy, should be followed up 3 and 6 monthly. Cycloplegic refraction should be done 6 monthly, at least annually. At every visit, you should explain about care of screen time guidelines, importance of outdoor activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for
Yeah.
your
Thank you,
presentation.
sir.
I would also like to thank our chairpersons. You've been giving some extra time to all our speakers. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Chairpersons, can you please invite the next speaker? Thank you.
I think Dr. Aloka wants to present last. Has Dr. Amit joined? No. So I think we'll invite now Dr. Supriya, and she will be.
Sorry to interrupt, Doctor. Dr. Supriya is not going to speak, but on her behalf, we have Dr. Parikshit, who's going to give the presentation.
Okay, Dr. Parikshit, then we should let us continue with your presentation before going to Dr. Aloka. Is anyone speaking for Dr. Mahir also?
So far, sir, we haven't got any update on that.
Achha.
But yes, Dr. Parikshit had personally told us about this.
Dr. Parikshit is there, but
yeah, I've requested him to unmute himself, but I think he is not present near his screen or the laptop.
Maybe till that time we can discuss. If there's anything panelists want to discuss, we can go ahead and discuss. Maybe Dr. Love can give some tips if there is a time. If there's in between.
Broadly, I would what we do is that we divide the children into infants, then pre-verbal, then verbal but not school going, and that is how the examination
it's 12:30.
So that has been very well covered by all panelists, and the most common what we use in preschool going children but verbal is the Liais symbol. What is your experience, Dr. Jitendra? What do you use for vision assessment in preschool verbal children?
Yeah, I think Liais symbols and terror acuity cards are quite useful. Is my voice coming? Hello?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
I think Liais and terror acuity card both are quite useful. Just that we should be cautious that, you know, with terror acuity card, it can sometimes overestimate the visual acuity. That's it. Otherwise, it's fine. I mean,
and regarding catford drum, what is suppose if the child is following the drum? What is how can we interpret it in terms of visual acuity? What is the expected visual acuity of the child if he is following the catford drums?
I have not used catford drum, but I do use optokinetic nystagmus drum. But I don't use. I think they are quite similar, but I have not used catford drum much.
With due respect, doctors, sorry to interrupt. We have Dr. Parikshit with us now, who's going to speak on behalf of Dr. Supriya. So with your kind permission, can we allow him to do that?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Dr. Parikshit, you can please...
can you see my screen, sir?
Yes, we can see your presentation. Perfect, sir. You can go on.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Khoshgave. Thank you, chairpersons. Well, most of the speakers earlier have made our job easier as to how to examine a blind child. So we know the visual milestones for a normal child, that soon after birth, a child can fix and follow a light source. By 1 month, the fixation can become central, steady, and maintained. By 3 months, the child's eyes fall, move right of face. By 6 months, they can reach out accurately for toys. By 9 months, they can look for hidden toys. By 2 years, picture matching. And by 3 years, we can have letter matching. And by 5 years, a Snellen chart can be used. So we can use the same thing when we want to think of a blind child, and we just want to have a quick look at the child's vision. Now, normal visual development sees a rapid increase during the first year of life, and binocular vision appears by the 6 months of life. So the early period is the critical period because 75% of the tasks that a child learns is from visual clues. So for a child whom we think is blind, ask for present illness. If the child is blind, the onset of blindness, nystagmus, photophobia, eye roving, if there is poking, history of seizures, because all of these are important. And you of course think of past history, treatment, surgery, systemic illnesses, developmental milestones, and if there is any family history of ocular and systemic disease. Now, for infants and earlier speakers, Dr. Tejaswani, Dr. Beke have gone through this. We look at visual fixation, visual evoked potentials, optokinetic nystagmus, Bruckner's test can be done. We can look for good pupillary response, fixation behavior. So we think a child is blind, but then first we have to be sure 100% that we have seen and done all the tests. And forced choice preference gives optimum response after 12 months. So we know in toddler, we can do a Cardiff card. For a preschooler, HOTV, LIA, and Cardiff. And for school going, again, we can have Snellen's or Logmark. And also ask for functional vision. What the people see. Do they think that this child is able to see? Can the child do activities? So the purpose is to provide information about the use of vision to plan training. Because finally, when we are looking at a child who purportedly is blind, we have later to plan for rehabilitation services. And we know
Hello.
Yeah, I think there is something wrong with Dr. Parikshit's in internet. So I think we can just wait for a couple of seconds so that he can resume back. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So we can put the timer on pause. Yeah, Dr. Parikshit, are you good to go again?
Oh, I'm sorry, you did not hear my presentation.
We did hear your presentation, but at the end of the presentation,
last two, three slides. Last two, three slides.
Last two, three slides, you were frozen.
I'll do it again, sir.
Yes, thank you, doctor. Thank you so much.
सर आप वीडियो ऑफ करके शेयर कर लीजिए आपका.
I will put my video off. Okay. Yeah. One is we have been through this. The earlier speakers have said how to assess vision of a toddler, Cardiff cards, a preschooler by HOTV or LIA, and of course for a school-going child, a Logmar or a Snellen's is the best. But along with this, we also have to think of functional vision. You know, what is it that the people see? How can they see this child? Do they see this child using its vision under various conditions? And the purpose is to provide information about the use of vision to plan training to enhance visual skills. Because when a child comes to us as pediatric ophthalmologists for examination, one, we must measure vision. If we think vision is not measurable, we have to be sure that the child is blind, that the child's vision is less than 3 meters or 1 meter. If we are sure that this child is blind, then to confirm whether this child has a medically treatable or a surgically treatable. Yeah. If there is no medical or surgically treatable problem, then we think of rehabilitation. which we know is a joint responsibility of the ophthalmologist, the optometrist, and the rehab specialist. And we must take the pediatrician also, because later this child is going to go to a pediatrician. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak instead of Dr. Supriya.
Thank you, Dr. Parikshit. And I think we have some time. So chairpersons, if you feel that time, we can definitely have.
Is that Dr. Aloka ready? No.
Unfortunately, we do not have Dr. Aloka right now. We also do not have Dr. Mihir. So I think we can utilize the rest of the time if we have some question answers or any kind of suggestions, sir.
I think then we can have one concluding remark by Dr. Chandni and then finish it. Dr. Chandni, are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm there.
Yeah, please.
Actually, most important thing is inspection in case of child vision assessment, because starting from the entry to the clinic, we can guess what may be the condition of the eyes of the child. And another thing for the, we have one teaching that if we close the better seeing eye, the child will resist. But in my experience, sometimes the child also they resist for the touch. So if you cover the eye, you take care that you don't touch the face of the eye. It is very important, because sometimes they resist to the touch of the examiner. So this may be misleading that the eye is not seeing better. And all the presentations are very good, I think, and we learned a lot from our respected Dr. Parikshit Gagate also. But should we wait for the other two? Or can we connect them? Is it possible?
Yeah, even Dr. Jitendra Jethani is here. He's one of the most, a senior pediatric ophthalmologist. Even if you can give us some inputs, Dr. Jitendra.
I think they were wonderful lectures. Mainly about visual acuity, and I think, as Dr. Chandni said, that it is mainly your experience, which guides you. Even if the optom comes to you with a different reading, sometimes you can easily see the look of the child, and inspection plays a very important role. So when you are in the clinic, it is it's very easy because you have control over the situation. I think in school screening, it becomes little difficult, and we may have false negatives or false positives. But in the clinic, normally, as pediatric ophthalmologists, we give enough time to the patient to screen, to understand. Very, very correct that, they are sensitive to touch. And also sometimes, you should talk with the parents. What is the good time to examine? If the kid is sleepy, he won't let you. We normally go by the kids' routine rather than our routine. In adults, we go by our routine, and in children, we have to be more accommodative in terms of what his demands are and what he wants us to do. Otherwise, he will not cooperate. That's it. You may have to reschedule the appointment sometimes because, he is not in a mood. So it is very important in pediatric ophthalmology that we should understand that we are here with a special, not special in terms of needs, but even otherwise, kids are slightly different from adults in the sense that they may not really respond to the way we want it to. And especially with cortically, these developmentally delayed kids, special kids, you may feel that he is not able to see, and sometimes it is only the fact that, he is not responding to the traditional way of checking vision. And he is able to see, he is not able to assimilate. His cognition is at a loss, or he is not able to respond to Snellen's chart, even if he is 8 years. So age appropriate, very important, but understanding appropriate is also equally important. So we have to go down to his level to understand what his visual acuity is. Yeah.
Wanted to ask one question for the panel. That we are seeing in COVID era, we are seeing a lot of pre-presbyopic adults coming with binocular visual function problems or dysfunction, we can say. So how many of us are seeing, and at what percentage we are seeing these binocular vision problems in kids, like accommodative infacility and all? How common is that in your OPD? Considering the COVID era that is going on.
Has anyone seen increased incidence? I'm not sure about this. Dr. Jitendra?
We didn't hear you, sir. Shailja wants to add?
No.
Shailja?
No, sir. Myself, Dr. Nishita, I had asked a question that in considering the COVID era, we are seeing a lot of patients, especially adult pre-presbyopic age, having binocular vision problems like accommodative infacility or insufficiency, right? So how common is that in pediatric age group considering the COVID era? Because they are all seeing the screens and having less outdoor activities. Myopic progression, yes, definitely has been seen or noted down. But how common is binocular dysfunction, accommodative dysfunction, you can say?
So, Nikita, if I can add, I mean, we see occasionally children with binocular dysfunction due to increased digital devices. But I would not say it's increased a lot during the COVID era. Neither we have done a comparative study. But because the denominator has decreased, like the number of patients as such, routine follow-ups are reduced, only those with problems they come. So we do see that these things have inflated, like myopia progression or, palsies or things like accommodative. But if you compare the exact numbers with the previous years, probably they'll be similar. We even don't know whether all the children are actually coming and showing. So yes, theoretically, it is possible that they may have more eye strain. I also see that in summers it increases, could be a little bit due to allergic conjunctivitis also, that they have this eye strain and possibility, because several times the fusional amplitudes, accommodation, everything is normal, but they still complain of eye strain. So it's a mixture. Eye strain is definitely a mixture of everything we need to look at.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add that I completely agree with Dr. Shailja that we have not seen an increase in binocular vision problems, but myopic progression, yes, we saw a lot of patients who were already on low concentration atropine progressing, and even otherwise these things have increased. But mainly you see these problems in presbyopes, early presbyopes around 35, 38 years of age. Children have a very robust amplitude of accommodation. So that is probably the reason why they get away with it, rather than, complaining, they get away with it. Most of the kids, in fact, I would say that, most of the progression in myopia, they have also not come still because they're not going outdoors, they're not copying from the board. So what has happened is they are in the house only. I think we will see a larger number once the lockdown completely goes away, maybe in coming 8 months or 10 months, because still, they have not realized that they cannot see at a distance because they're not using their distance vision.
Yes.
They're totally stopped outdoor activities. So that is probably the reason, for only for myopia progression. Binocular vision problems, truly speaking, in fact, I have seen my patients who are having intermittent exos, they have also not worsened. They're still the same.
Okay.
I got few patients with accommodative spasm, but not weakness of accommodation, but accommodative spasm I got, and accommodative lag also. That is, after a long time on the screen, the visions become blurred. So this type of complaints have increased a little bit, but not much.
Thanks all.
Okay, then. I think we can conclude now.
Yeah.
Right, doctor. So if permission is there, so I request our chairpersons to please give a concluding note.
Thank you everyone for your enlightening talks, and I think with that point we will conclude this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank all our chairpersons. Thank you, Dr. Love. I would like to thank Dr. Chandani, and I'd like to thank Dr. Ankit Bhavsar. And I'd also like to thank all our speakers who are here for a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.